Hi there, I am the CRM Ninja, and on today's episode of the Oops Factor, I have Carmen Ysewijn. Welcome to the show, Carmen.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Lovely to have you on, especially as you're only 1 hour away time zone wise. It's a bit of
Yeah,
a treat to talk to somebody so close.
easier for the time zones if they're a bit closer, that's true.
That is indeed easier. So for those who don't know, Carmen lives in Belgium, near to Antwerp, which is one reason why I've got this lovely Belgian picture, stylish, in my background.
Yeah, it's the main square in Antwerp, and if there is something happening in Antwerp that's outdoors, it's mostly on the main square. So that's really cool.
That's true. I've attended a couple of like market style stuff over the years there.
Hmm.
So when I've visited, so I know you don't live in central Antwerp. You live more towards outside a bit of a while way. But I also know that you enjoy things like hiking. So can you tell us a bit about some of your favorite hikes and what you enjoy doing?
Well, I prefer if we go hiking, I usually go together with my boyfriend, and sometimes we take our small dog. And I prefer to go hiking in the French part of Belgium. So we call it Wallonia, where we
Okay,
have more hills, more forests, and less cities and villages. So I really prefer to go walking in nature um, if we go for a walk. Yeah.
Otto, have you seen anything very interesting during your hikes at all?
Interesting. Hmm. Well, I think that nature in itself is interesting. When the way that a riverbed goes through the forest, or the way that when it's snowing or when it's ice, how the ice looks hanging from the trees, if it's like really, really cold, which it was a couple of weeks ago or months ago
Yep.
in winter here. I think that nature in itself is interesting. It's beautiful to look at, and you can always find something new. And it's completely different than looking at a screen the entire day, which I do for work. So it's a great change of scenery.
Most of us do it for work. In fact, most of us do it from work, and then we close our work system and we go and we do it for pleasure when we're watching films
Yeah.
or catching up on social media or stuff. Yes, no, it is nice to get out. Um, in the areas that you would normally hike through, are there any animals in there, or is it just sort of, as you say, like forests and other stuff?
You don't see a lot of animals, or at least I haven't seen a lot of like big animals and a small bird, for example. But on a hike, it's not like I've seen a deer or a rabbit. Not
Okay,
I think they're afraid of the people, because most of the hikes that we do, I think hiking is very common in Belgium. So the animals know people, and they know that they're no fun usually. So
no fun.
well, no. Um, I feel like people, when they see an animal, they want to go near and they want to touch it. So it's not a fun experience for the animal.
It's not a fun experience for the animal. I
Mhm.
can imagine, in my mind's eye, there's being a lookout, you know, a rabbit or something with a pair of binoculars, and they say, "Oh, not another group of hikers
Yeah.
coming towards us! Quick, everybody, hide!"
Hide into your holes. Yeah, and then we have the dog. Well, it's a small dog, but she makes a lot of noise. She barks at everything that she hears or sees. She's a bit scared that way. So there's not a lot of chance of us seeing an animal, especially when we have our own small animal with us.
True. What type of dog is she?
She's a cross between a Chihuahua and a Maltese. So small, white, and fluffy, which is perfect for me.
Small, white, and
Uh,
fluffy. That
Small,
sounds
white, and fluffy.
hilarious.
Yes. She's not in the room, otherwise I would show her, but she's not with me right now.
You're going to have to send me a picture afterwards so I can see the small, white, fluffy dog.
I will. I will. You can see her on my Twitter. I posted a picture with her already. The picture where I'm knitting, the white thing that's on
Ah,
my lap, that's the dog. Yeah.
that's the dog.
That's the dog. Yeah. So really
Oh wow,
small.
that really, she really is fluffy.
Yes. She needs to go to the hairdresser tomorrow, actually. So she's at her fluffiest now.
Right. Now, I did see the picture, and I was wondering if that was something that you had knitted. But now that you explained that it's the dog, I can see, right, definitely
Yeah.
fluffy. Yeah.
It's
Okay.
it's the dog.
Got it. Got it. So moving on from hikes and small white fluffy dogs to the oops factor, what do you have to share with us today?
Well, I have a story about an app that I created, or that we created our company for a customer, which was, well, I would say it was our first big Canvas app project, where we were going to digitize or improve an entire process for account managers that go to customers. They do visits and they want to see how the relationship is with the customers, and they want to propose some events for those people to go to. And we were going to put that into a Canvas app where their data was in Dynamics on-premise. So we had to create a sync with Dataverse, with online, so that we could access the data that we needed and then write back the data that we get from the process. And well, it was, first of all, it was a very complex app. So we learned a lot about complexity and working with delegation and all of that in Canvas apps, which is super interesting. But what I want to talk about actually is that towards the end of the development process, when we were about to go live, some issues started to pop up with a function that wasn't working anymore, or a screen that wasn't loading anymore. And of course, it was
just randomly,
yes.
or a specific screen?
It was a specific screen. It was the final screen in the first steps that they had to go through at the customer. They had a couple of questions that they needed to ask. And then in the last step, the list of events was generated that they could propose to the customer. And then they could tailor that, filter some out, or add some specific ones that didn't come out based on the questions that they answered in the earlier steps.
Okay.
But that last screen wasn't loading anymore. And so we looked into it, and we found that for some reason, when we clicked on a button, that button navigated to the next screen, but then the on visible of that screen wouldn't load. So it would just stop there. From App Monitor, that's just where it stops. And we couldn't find a reason for it. It didn't show an error. There was nothing wrong in the code or the functions. So we went to Microsoft support. We logged a support ticket. And the first 3 days, it's the basic questions where you always have to answer, yeah, I looked at already, I Googled, tried that already, it's not that. And then finally, we got through to an actual engineer who looked into it with their team. And they came back with the answer that the concurrent function was causing some problems. And they were right, because if we removed concurrent, everything worked. So we removed the concurrent.
So it was a problem. It wasn't a problem specifically with the way that you had written it. It was a problem that there was something that seemed to be conflicting on the platform.
Yes. Yeah, and it was just because everything inside that concurrent could be executed concurrently. It's not that something was dependent on something else. So that wasn't the issue. It was just that if it was inside the concurrent, it wouldn't work. And if we took it out, it would work.
It's really frustrating when these things happen, right? You put something in where, according to the documentation, it should work absolutely fine, and then it doesn't. And you remove it and everything works fine, but you need that piece of functionality. So you try and work out what you do with it. Yeah,
indeed. So it was really strange. We didn't understand it at all. They didn't understand it either. So it's so why it was happening, no clue. And the thing was, which is also important to the story, it worked fine in the App Studio with concurrent, and it didn't work outside. It didn't work in the player with the concurrent.
You ran into that golden nugget whereby the development environment, everything works fine, and then you release it and you use it outside the development environment, and it doesn't work. I've experienced that a couple of times. So frustrating, right?
Yes, because you just expect when you build it and you try it in the preview function of the studio, it works. You're like, okay, let's publish this. And then the users say, it doesn't work. Well, it does in the studio, so it doesn't in the player. And then you try it in the player. And then you see, indeed, it doesn't work. So it's not their machine. It's actually some difference between the studio and the player that there is somewhere. So that was interesting. When we removed the concurrent, it worked in both. But then we tried to look for the root cause of that, because we wanted to include the concurrent function just to reduce the load time of the screen, because a couple of things were happening at the same time there, of course.
Sure.
And then it took a couple of months. They didn't really find a way or a reason why that was happening. It took a couple of months, and we had finally gotten, we had a call scheduled with the engineering team of the Power Platform. So some of the real people that are working on it, me together with my colleague Yannick, who is an MVP, because he got that meeting through the MVP back channels. Because we had a lot of bad experiences with the service desk still. And then we were in that meeting, and we were all prepared. I had changed the function back to include a concurrent, and we tried it in the meeting, and suddenly everything worked. I was like, damn, what did we make a fuss about? And then they helped us go back to a previous version of Power Apps, because maybe it was something that had been changed with an update. So we went back 3 versions, because I believe the last version that we were able to go back to, and still it worked fine inside
It's
Studio.
so frustrating when that
player.
happens. You know, it's like traditional IT support. Something's not working. The IT person turns up and it just works.
And it just works. Yeah, indeed. And so we were there like, maybe we should have, because it was, I think there were like 4 months in between the initial solution or workaround to remove the concurrent, and then having that meeting with the engineering team. And we were there, maybe we should have tested this in between, but yeah, we didn't. So that was, we were quite embarrassed, both of us, that we had wasted everyone's time, essentially. So yeah.
But it was working.
It was working. That was the important part. And in the meantime, the app was actually already live without the concurrent. And the users didn't complain about excessive load times. So it was just really looking for that root cause that we wanted to do. And since it was our app that had a problem, we also wanted to help them resolve that. But somehow in earlier release already of Power Apps, of Canvas apps, it was solved already, and we just hadn't realized that it was.
We're just really busy with everything going on, and if you've got something, you've logged a support call which is in the future, and trying to test it out every day or every week or so, it can take time.
Yeah, indeed. And if everything's working, then the saying, if it's not broken, why fix it? That was a bit what we were operating under that assumption.
And if users don't complain, don't look for their complaints.
No, indeed, I couldn't agree more. Don't give yourself extra work if it's not necessary.
I am a very avid subscriber of that theory.
Wanting to make improvements just because you can.
Improvements are good, but sometimes improvements you do for actual improvements, and sometimes you just do it for the sake of it. If you think of traditional coding stuff, a developer written 100 lines of code may go back and improve it down to 60 lines of code because they come up with better, elegant ways, and it makes it faster and the rest of it. But the customer may not realize that and not complain about it, but just playing around with it for the heck of it. It's nice to do on our own time, but obviously we need to get paid for it.
Yes, indeed. But it is sometimes nice to just play around with things, try out new things, just also because you learn from it, which is
definitely
very valuable. And also, even if it's not immediately visible for the customer, you have learned something which you can then use in your next project to deliver faster or better.
Yeah, very good. No, thank you so much for that lovely story.
You're welcome. And the great thing is that now that application is actually used as, or will be used in Belgium as a story for Microsoft, as a success story. So because they really liked the way that it looked, because it looked so professional. It was one of the first applications, like really more complex applications, where we also worked on design. So it's being used as a success story. So that's really nice.
Wonderful. Well, when it gets published, please forward me a link. I'd love to read all about it.
I will do that.
Brilliant.
Definitely.
Well, once again, thank you so much for coming on the show. Viewers, we hope that you've enjoyed hearing about this, and I will retweet out the success story when it comes out. Feel free to take a look at the rest of the Oops Factor playlist, subscribe to the channel, take a look at the blog. And if you would like to come and share your own story, hit the link below, put in your details, and I'd love to have you on the show. Have a great day.